Tanse, I'm Dallas Olapesh, an Ininu Soto video game designer. This is the fourth and final part of a video series that will introduce you to the Unity game engine and the process that goes into making your first game. And by the end, we're looking to have a video game we can beat. This series is part of a larger initiative from Taking It Global and Imaginative. This initiative is hashtag Create2Learn that teaches you digital skills. To learn more about their upcoming projects, check out their Instagram at Create2Learn or the hashtag Create2Learn on social media. Before we continue, a land acknowledgement. This series was produced in Brandon, Manitoba on Treaty 2 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Oji-Cree, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and is the homeland of the Métis Nation. This treaty was made in 1871, and to learn more, visit trcm.ca. So, we want to finish our game. We're going to take a look at the user interface game objects that Unity has. This isn't the UI of the engine itself, but rather the UI for our very own game. We're going to have text on screen that reflects our blankies collected and presents us with a losing screen or a winning screen when it's appropriate to happen. To create a UI, right-click in the scene hierarchy, head to UI, and select Text. This created three things: a canvas, which is where our user interface is rendered, and a text child. There is also an event system, but this is more important for main menus in video games. By selecting my text game object and pressing F, I can see that my canvas is huge. Simply put, holy moly. It won't be nearly this huge when playing the game. This is just an overlay. I can change my text however I want using the text component attached to the game object. I'm going to change my color to white and move it within my canvas. This canvas is shown with a large white border around it. Imagine this white border is the TV, and move the text where you'd want the text to be displayed. Here's an example that you can barely see. Let me try that again. Alright, that works. Now I'm going to change my text some more. I'll change its font size, and above the scene hierarchy, I'm going to select what's called the rectangle tool. My text is rendered within a rectangle, and I want it to have more space to exist within, like a koala. Using the W shortcut, I'll move it some more, and resize it with R. Now, I'm going to change what's written in this text. And see that it's too big. And to allow for more space, I'm going to have to change the horizontal overflow in my component to overflow instead of wrap. This will let my text spill out of the rectangle instead of wrapping inside of it. Totally configure this however you would want for your game. My rect transform component has anchors in it that I can use to anchor my text. This is helpful for when using multiple screen sizes for a video game, as text can remain tethered to these anchors. I'll hold Shift and Alt to pin it to the top left anchor. Whoops, doing that activated my Cree keyboard, which is only on my computer and Unity doesn't recognize it. I'll fix that. Now, I'm just going to slightly move it so that my text isn't kissing the walls. That's just a designer phrase since my text has no lips to kiss with. I don't want this text to change during the game, but I want my score to. I'll duplicate this using Ctrl and D. You could also do Ctrl Z and Ctrl V to copy and paste like you would in something like Microsoft Word. I'll move this text to the top right and change it accordingly. Cool. So the text shows up properly. I'm quickly going to make presets for when I lose or win our game. Let's lose first, like an Avenger. So I'll right-click and create a new canvas in the UI section. I'll then give that canvas a panel. A panel is just an image that you can change however you want. It's like a background. Then I'll give that panel some text and write a happy message for when I lose. I'll use the rectangle tool to give myself some more room to work with and change the text however I want. So great, I'm pretty satisfied with this. Now I'm going to call this whole canvas the lose state. Then I'm going to copy and paste this to quickly make the win state. Let's rename it so as to not be confused later on. I don't want my screen to be crowded, so I'm going to disable the lose state for now using the inspector tab. I just check off this box in the top right and it vanishes. When we win, it'll be green instead of red, but you could have any color that you'd want. Then I'll change up my message. Let's disable that one too for now. One last thing. Let's add a small tutorial for our player. We don't want this to be on screen the entire time, so how about just the starting area, where our player is? Let's create a new canvas, because we don't have enough of those. Within its components, we'll change it from screen space overlay to world space. Now, our canvas exists within the world of our game, instead of just being overlaid. I'll add this text to World Space UI and write something to explain how to play. I need to make various changes to make this text legible, but you could probably come up with something a bit more clever. Now, we need another game object to manage the things we just made for our game. We need a game manager. I'll create an empty game object and rename it. Then, we'll want to make another tag for manager. Capitals are important, which is something I neglected to remember here, so it's important that you do now. I want to make a script specific for this manager. In our code here, I typed in using unityengine.ui here, but then I realized it wasn't necessary within this script. It'll only be necessary for our other one. We need to reference our main UI that shows our score, along with our loss state, and our win state. I want to be able to click and drag these game objects within Unity, so I'll make them public. When our game starts, I only want our main UI to be visible. So as a backup, I'll use the setActive command for all of these game objects. The setActive command takes bools, which we remember represents true or false, so I'll use true or false accordingly based on what I want to show up at the first frame of the game, which is only my main UI. We don't need our update function in this script, so I'm just going to highlight it and Thanos it out of existence. Then I'll replace it with a function for when we win the game. I plan to use our player script to access this function, so I'll make it public. All I'm doing here is turning off my main UI and turning on my win UI. Then I'll copy and paste that function and change it to be a lose function where my main UI is turned off and my lose UI is turned on. These are two separate functions that I can call based on the events that take place within my video game. Awesome! So now I have functions to use when I win or lose. All I need is to access these functions and allow my score to be updated on screen. We're almost there. To access my text, now I need to be using the Unity Engine.UI library. Where all my references are, I'll add a public text with the code name BlankyScore. Text would not have been there if I didn't have my Unity Engine.UI library up above, so that's cool. I'm just going to move this up here since collectible value and BlankyScore are more related to each other. This is just me being Mr. Clean. We need a function to write our score on the screen for our game, so it's going to be changing as we play. We'll have this go off when the game starts and whenever our score is altered, which is when we collect things. Public void write score, with a set of braces and curly brackets. I want to access the text component of my BlankyScore, so I'll use the period initializer and set it to something. I'll set it to my collectible value since that is my score in number form. Text can only work with sentences or strings, so our collectible value is incompatible because it's an integer, a number. I need to add the function toString with a set of braces to convert this. Amazing! So I'll have this function go off whenever we collect a blankie. Ignore this next part. I added collectible value equals collectible value plus 1 without realizing that I already had it within my code. So it would make it that I collected it twice for one event. I want to win my game whenever I have collected 3 blankies. So I'll have it so that if my collection is equal to 3, I access my game manager script and win. We're going to reference our other script now so that we can call one of its functions. To reference another script, set it to private to keep things under control. Since scripts are components, I'll put the name of my other script after and give it a short code name. And now I need to set a reference with code. Earlier, I made the manager tag, so I'll set the code name game to equal the search for a game object with the tag manager. I forgot to capitalize here, so if you wrote your version with a capital, remember to keep that. Once we find that game object, we'll just nab the component attached to it, which is our video game manager script. Now, to win, all we need to do is use our code name game. Use the period to access its commands, and type it here, the same we would any other function. And sadly, we're almost done. The game can hear us knocking, and we can't come in. We need a way to lose in our game too. We'll lose whenever we fall off our stage, using a tag and collision trigger. We'll preemptively use the tag loseZone, which we haven't made yet. If we collide with it, we'll use our codename game and use the lose function. Then I'll make an empty game object and create a new tag. Lose zone. I'll set that tag to this game object and add a box collider 2D. Whenever someone collides with this game object, they will lose the game. Then I'll use the size attributes of the collider component to make it super big, to account for how far I can jump around. Finally, I'll set it to isTrigger. Last thing I need to do is set all of the references that we've made. I'll grab the score text and link it to blanky score. And within my game manager, add all of my user interfaces, which I named earlier. For me, it doesn't work yet because I added that line of code I already had, so I'll remove that, and voila! We've made our first game with Unity. Congrats! You're amazing. Now, where do you go from here? Well, to head north of 60 in your Unity education, consider visiting learn.unity.com. There's tons of resources to take in beyond the scope of what I've taught you in this series, and there is a wide array of interactive video games out there in the world, and solutions to make every single one of them. Unity Learn can be a helpful resource for learning even more fundamentals so that you could just adapt them into your own visions. So, I hope you enjoyed this series and that there was something to take away from it. Once again, thanks to Taking It Global and Imaginative for making this series possible. Remember to follow at Create2Learn to keep up to date on even more series out there, to keep on learning. Okay, that's all the time I've got. I've got to get back to making video games on my PC version of Unity. Thanks for sticking around. Hi.